morning and welcome to the special meeting of the Glendale City Council on May 11th, 2021, being called to order at 9:06. Due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and health recommendations from the LA County Health Department, the Glendale City Council special meeting will be available to the public electronically. Due to social distancing requirements, the public will not be able to attend the meeting. You are encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of your homes to practice social distancing. The meeting can be viewed on local cable, Charter Cable Channel 6 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. It is also streaming online at glendaleca.gov at the public meeting portal. For public comments and questions during the meeting, you may call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting these questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person during the Glendale City Council special meeting. And with that, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Agajanian.
Present.
Brotman.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
And Mayor Devine.
Here. And your report, please?
The agenda for the Tuesday, May 11, 2021 special public meeting of the City Council was posted on May 4th, 2021 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what's next, please?
One would be finance regarding fiscal year 2021-2022 budget study session 4, departmental study session, library, arts and culture, Glendale Water and Power, and police.
Thank you. Mr. Galanian?
Yes, good morning, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. Thank you for being here today, this morning. This is the fourth study session that we have planned out of the total of 7. There's another one planned for Thursday. There will be another departmental presentation. To kick off today's study session that's guaranteed to be interesting and full of useful information for you to consider, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Schaefer, Gary Schaefer, Director of Library, Arts, and Culture Department, for his presentation. Michelle Flynn, Director of Finance, is also available. Obviously, Mike Garcia and I for questions. Dr. Schaefer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Galanian. Good morning, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Excited to present information on my department this morning, Library, Arts, and Culture. Library, can I get the slides up? Sure. Just a moment, please. Okay. All right. So Library, Arts, and Culture, as you all know, is a department that provides services in order to enrich the lives and knowledge of our residents. The department is made up of administration and finance, who manage personnel, facilities, and budget. Arts and Culture, who at the direction of the Arts and Culture Commission enact arts and culture policies, public art, and promotion of art activities and education throughout the community. System-wide operations, this team helps the public use library resources, providing customer service, leading workshops and events. And finally, technology, innovation and collections. This team ensures we have the books, movies, and music our community wants, and that our IT infrastructure can support user needs. Prior to COVID-19, we were planning on welcoming the public into our 8 libraries on a daily basis to convene, collaborate, and create. In other words, for public meetings, to study together, to build or make items in our makerspace. We would host 6 gallery exhibits at Brand and another half dozen or so at Reflect Space. We had plans to host our annual Maker Fest event and work with Community Development Department on its Tech Week initiative. That all changed, of course, mid-March. I have to say I'm very proud of staff and how they pivoted to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Feedback about our services during the pandemic period had been overwhelmingly positive. We recently implemented a customer survey and respondents rated us 9.52 out of 10 on the Net Promoter Score scale, indicating that a vast majority of customers would recommend the library to a friend. This year, we spent time focusing on some of the most pressing challenges to face the city during the pandemic. We expanded access to online materials, supported children learning remotely, hosted the Be the Change anti-racism series, and funded artists and their Glendale-based projects via Art Happens Anywhere initiative in conjunction with the library or the Arts and Culture Commission. Keeping the community informed and engaged is one of our highest priorities. When COVID hit, we knew we had to adapt to keep working library cards in the hands of our residents while continuing to provide essential resources to the community. Library Arts and Culture quickly pivoted to provide more online services during the pandemic by increasing e-collections, including making available to our customers the first Armenian language library ebook collection. We were first in the nation. Recently was contacted by LAPL, who would also like to add this, and making the 5-day-a-week newspaper Yerevat from Yerevan available each day, well, 5 days a week, digitally. We mailed over 74,000 households in Glendale an e-library card to access online services. It actually was a physical library card, but they could access things electronically, providing online programs to children, teens, and adults, and offering safe, contactless pickup services. Since then, we've increased e-collections by 141%, administered new library e-cards, and significantly expanded our online presence. This has helped to provide a safe outlet for the community to stay connected. Our collections and services are as relevant as ever. We also supported children in a very big way. We kept them informed and engaged with safer at home orders in place and children adapting to virtual learning. We knew we had to find ways to keep children and families engaged with our services. Library Arts and Culture used grant support to provide a branded dry erase board, activity booklet, and voucher to receive a free book to the 3,000 students who visit the GUSD mill sites throughout Glendale. This was part of our Lunch and Learn at the Library grant funding from the State Library. We also partnered with Community Services and Parks Department technology pods to provide the same dry erase board and a free book to the 101 students there. In addition, the library registered an additional 3,280 students for the Youth Student Library Card and launched 10 different online reading challenges for youth ages 0 to 18 for a total of 963 readers with 3,440 books read for a total of 304,000 plus minutes read. We also offered a variety of online children's programming, including story time all year long. In total, we've administered the 5,855 cards in our student library card program. This is in addition to cards that are already out in the community amongst GUSD students, and we maintain a high level of engagement with our children's programming. Our strong community presence has provided support and comfort to families looking to maintain a sense of normality. We also partnered with Glendale-based Age of Learning, who has worked with libraries for over 10 years in library only. And we are actually one of the few libraries in the nation that make their product available to our customers from home. This proved prescient during the pandemic as children could access the product remotely. So they did so for a total of 3,515 hours during the calendar year 2020. 883 children accessed and completed over 60,000 learning activities. We also provided a great deal of youth programming via videos that staff produce, so we've kind of become a production studio, and we've had over 14,253 children videos viewed. Adults added and teens added another over 7,000 for a total of 22,288 interactions via video. Another top priority is highlighting arts and culture in the community towards our eventual goal of making Glendale an arts and culture destination. In response to COVID-19 and its devastating effects on the arts and culture community, the City of Glendale's Library Arts and Culture Department and the Glendale Arts and Culture Commission relaunched the Art Happens Anywhere program, or AHA, with the purpose of encouraging the expansion of arts and culture activities to benefit the citizens of our community during these unique times. Through innovative use of digital and virtual technology, audiences' interactivity, and unconventional delivery methods, the AHA program fosters progressive attitudes toward art making, and performance, and to elevate the role of arts in enhancing our community. The AHA program is also an opportunity for artists to immediately begin working on proposed projects, resulting in the stimulation of the creative economy in Glendale and beyond during these challenging times. In total, 17 artist relief grants have been awarded. We've also kept our community informed and engaged with the Be the Change program series. In total, 2,767 participants have participated in the Be the Change series, which focuses on inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism. That is far more than we could accommodate in the auditorium for the 6 programs we've done so far, and we still have 3 to go before fiscal year end. Reckoning visitors, and I'll cover that exhibit in a moment, have actually already gone up another almost 400 plus visits. We've had 3,910 visits to Reckoning, and I believe Councilmember Brotman is one of those recent visitors. We've also, in the midst of one of the biggest protest movements in the United States history this past summer, we knew it was imperative that issues of inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism should be highlighted. Thus, we gave birth to this Be the Change idea series. Glendale Library Arts and Culture has been a library leader in the area, in the region, on this initiative, and have built collective understanding of systemic racism, elevated the voices and stories of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and inspired our community to be the change. For this program series, the library has put together multiple successful author events, exhibits, and online programming for Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month, Native American Heritage Month, Black History Month, the Armenian Genocide Remembrance Month, and currently Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, with events honoring the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre and the 1-year anniversary of the 2020 racial justice protest, as well as LGBTIQ+ Pride still to come. Reckoning was the most locally focused and impactful of our exhibits, exploring Glendale's past contribution to racism and the associated resistance to that racism, and this was done through archival photos and documents from Glendale Central Library's archives. We also have partnered with GUSD to engage students in the exhibit, and Arts and Culture Commission funded a public art effort as well. These events have proven to be a big success with a high level of public attendance, as previously covered.
If I may, Gary,
Yes.
add that as Madam Mayor, Member City Council, you notice the KPIs for this department have been embedded in the slides that you just saw that was shared with you, as opposed to standalone list of KPIs. And I'm going to open it up for questions on any of these programs before we move into the budget slides.
Are there any questions from my colleagues? I just want to say that the child supportive services are stellar, and what you're doing with Be the Change, this is a great initiative, and just a good job. Any other of my colleagues want to make a comment or a question?
Yeah, I'll, if I may, Mayor Devine,
Yeah.
I'll make a comment. I have some questions maybe in a minute, but yeah, I started just on this Be the Change series, or actually the Reckoning. I don't know what you would call it, the Reckoning exhibit. That's the word. Yeah, I just kind of embarrassed to say I only went in to look at it recently after I had a tour with Dr. Schaefer and Nicole Passini and others, and it's really fabulous. So yeah, I just want to say how proud I am to see how we kind of took the work that we did with the Sundown Town Resolution and just and how this staff turned it into this amazing set of information, and it's really engaging. So thank you, Gary, and thank the team. Really, really impressive. And I still have a lot more to go through. I'm sure there's a lot more that I'll learn, but great stories, just great materials. It's amazing.
Thank you both.
Mayor,
Yes? Oh, Mr. Kasakian,
thank you.
remember?
I want to commend the library for pivoting and adjusting during a very difficult time. Obviously, during the pandemic, it wasn't easy to figure out how to provide services to our residents. Obviously, many people rely on the libraries as a resource to find options to just find information, to be able to do research, especially with schools being very limited in access. And I know that at one point you had a delivery pickup service that was suspended and then restarted. And I know it hasn't been easy to try and figure out what is allowable and what isn't. I'm glad to see that we're on the path to having the library reopen and have it accessible. And I could not come soon enough as far as I'm concerned. My question regarding, I thought the library cards that you mailed to residents, we received that little mailer in our household, and I thought it was fantastic. My question is, how many people from that mailer signed up to get library cards? Do we have a figure on that in order to gauge its effectiveness?
Yeah, we do have a figure on it. It was actually paid for by the Library Trust, so it was grant funded. In fact, the numbers were somewhat low. I would say 4% actually used that actual card. However, in terms of direct mail, that would actually be considered a high percentage of users. The other thing is, for many, it served as a reminder they already have a library card, so it just served as, oh wow, I didn't know the library had all these services. So to actually track how many people did it, number used it was low, but I think overall it was a very successful campaign as far as it got people back using the library. It reminded people that the library was here for them to use, and so many, I believe, just ended up using their library card they already had. I mean, we have 78% of households have a library card in the community, so it's a pretty high percentage.
Sure. I think it's important. I mean, regardless, I just want to know what the number was, and we need to also ask ourselves, what does success look like for any project that we're doing? Is it the number of people that are going to come through the doors? Is it the number of people that are going to respond? Or is it just the other intrinsic benefits of having something that goes to people's homes and, as you mentioned, just reminds them that we're still here as a service? But if it's 4% that we got under those circumstances, that becomes something by which to gauge any future mailers and see what sort of response we get. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. And in terms of the series, is whether it's Reckoning or Be the Change, my question is, it's great that we're doing this. I fully support it. I think that for a number of years, I've always felt that the library has a key role to play in educating and informing our community about what has happened in the past, what we can do differently to move our communities forward. But I would like to see, and I would like to know whether we've reached out to our schools, the school district and the colleges, to collaborate with them, because they have ready audiences, sponges ready to absorb information. And it's fantastic if we do something that's great, that maybe myself or a couple of council members go to, and a couple of community members who are already primed for that message. But how do we get the community to shift its mindset? And we have to start as early as possible. We have to start with our youth. So I'd like to ask the question, did we work with the schools, and are we getting these classes to come in? Is it being incorporated somehow into the curriculum, or what our social science teachers are teaching our students in Glendale Unified and at GCC?
Yes, yes, and yes. So we actually, because it's virtual, so the students can't actually come in to view it. However, we did actually do a presentation to GUSD, has a cultural group that's made up of parents, some students, teachers, and others. So we made a presentation to them. And then currently with Reckoning, we're actually working with several teachers across GUSD for students to respond to it. So they're actually have incorporated it into curriculum, and we are working with them. We've also been in touch with this with GCC. We're working with a couple of professors up there. But the beauty of this also is that it lives on as long as the software licenses are maintained and we have electricity, which I'm assured, yes, we will have. I mean, that is the beauty of this exhibit. Typically, when we mount any exhibit, it unfortunately has to come down at some point. And so we can continue to build on that and work with that. So I'm happy to report that we have engaged them and we will continue to do so.
Great. I mean, I want to again echo the importance of including our schools into it, because I know that fourth grade is when we start learning about California history, if I recall correctly. Everyone making those sugar cube missions. But in addition to that, learning our own local history here in Glendale. I don't know if the school district has that incorporated into their curriculum. I know that certainly we learned a little bit of Glendale history when I was attending schools here, but that's because our teacher, Doris McKentley, was like a living Glendale historian who knew a great deal about it. In fact, her family was, her childhood home was where the Oak of Peace was. But in as much as we can collaborate, work with them, and have something in place where they're learning about Glendale history and learning about this past, I think it will help the community as a whole tremendously. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to go on.
So this is our high-level summary of the department's budget. This is up about $2.5 million from last year, but rest assured that's primarily due to an increase in spending in the art fund and proposed allocation of developer impact fees for upcoming projects. And we'll now go into more detail on it. So so this is our personnel numbers currently. It's a combination of, due to a combination of part-time staff attrition and an increase in full-time vacancies and staff on medical leave, et cetera, has left us with about 30% fewer staff than we had pre-pandemic. So this is the current level of staffing at the library as far as what we're budgeted for. It is up slightly, and that is actually due to a grant-funded intern as example for why there's been a change, and that's for the Arts and Culture Commission. So we have a small increase in the general fund budget, and this is due to increases in building maintenance and ISD charges, as well as minimum wage adjustments and pre-programmed step increases. Again, the Urban Art Fund is up, and that is primarily due to planned iconic art that Commission previously approved, our work with a council previously approved, our work with a consultant that's helping us with this, and this iconic art will go throughout the city with a primary emphasis on the arts and entertainment district. There's also a slight increase in the library fund of about $13,000, and this is due to successful grant applications submitted to the California State Library. And then increases in the library mitigation fee fund are meant for enhancements at Central Library.
Mayor Devine?
I hear Mr. Brotman, Councilmember
Yeah.
Brotman, you have a question.
Is it okay? I just wanted to ask a question as we're going through. On the Urban Art Fund, Gary, how many works do we anticipate? And I'm thinking of the iconic art we've been, you've been talking about. How many do we anticipate getting in place in this upcoming fiscal year? Yeah, that's my first. I have a couple more, but I'll ask you one by one.
Right. I believe in the upcoming fiscal year, most of them will be funded and in place and started. So we're hopeful probably half, if not a little bit more, will be in place. But they're due to be in place, I believe, in 2 years total time to maybe 2.5 years.
Because, well, you have 1.6 million or 1.7 million, but that can't cover all of that, right? Because or is that covering all of what you're anticipating? for the iconic?
Yeah, no, it is slightly less. I think we're looking at about 2 million for the total package of iconic art.
And how many pieces?
10. Very
10 pieces?
very iconic art.
Uh-huh. And I mean, have we gone out and figured out? It just doesn't seem like a lot of money. I mean, I have no idea what this stuff costs, but is that how do you know that you can get these pieces in that price range?
So we're actually working with a consultant slash curator, if you will, and this is his expertise in what he does. He does this for cities as well as for shopping centers, and so he did feel that this was adequate funding to do this. So, we feel fairly confident.
And then we have another in the Urban Art Fund. Then there's still another. What's left, like 5 million or something?
There's a total right now of about 8.1 million. So after the 2 million expenditure, 6 million, it does grow.
Okay. And then just one more. So I understand there are a few pieces that are going to be in the Artsock Paseo area. How are those funded through? That's not through economic development? That would be through the Urban Arts Fund?
No, it's through the Urban Art Fund.
Okay, and you're just coordinating with them on those pieces?
Yes, and at this point with Public Works as the project's being handed off to them.
Okay. All right, thanks. Thanks.
You bet.
I have a question. Councilmember Agajanian.
I just, I don't know where the money is coming from or what kind of reserve we have. To go 22% over a year before, in my opinion, is too much. Even though you mentioned we have 8 million in this account and then the other accounts, that's why you are using that money. But to add from 11 million, 22% over that 11 million, $2.5 million. I mean, I'm not happy with that. Just to spend 800,000 on library mitigation fee fund. I mean, regardless, what's the reason? That's too much.
So specifically for the library mitigation fee, council member, or with the arts and
Mitigation and the Urban Art Fund, which
Okay.
you said we have $8 million. And the money coming probably from there, but still, if we have money, we don't have to say if we have money, we have to spend it.
Councilmember Devine, members of the City Council, Councilmember Agajanian. I do believe this is unusual for the Urban Art Fund, but it is primarily tied to this iconic art. That is why it's so much higher than it has been in the past. So given that the Arts and Entertainment District will be coming online, it is the Arts and Entertainment District, so it makes sense to put iconic art there. And quite frankly, our goal is to change Glendale into an arts and culture destination, and the way we do that is with this kind of iconic art. So I think it's unusual. I don't believe it will be as high in the future, but I would also say we're hitting our stride. We've recruited, she's been with us now 2 years, an incredible arts and culture principal administrator who's just really working so hard to make this stuff happen. So I think in general, that's why it is higher, and it has been reviewed and vetted by the Arts and Culture Commission, and they're certainly on board. And with the iconic art, because of the price tags that will come with that art, those pieces will be coming before City Council for final review. In regards to the library mitigation fund, those are monies that were recently freed up. They're developer impact fees. They need to be spent, or they need to be, what's the word, Michelle? Well, refund, that's not, or refund. I was like, they need to be assigned. So that's the primary purpose there. And we have plans for that money. So I think, you know, that's why that money is put there right now.
No, excuse me. If you don't spend the money, it's not going to go back to general fund?
It
Is
goes
that what
back
you're
to
saying?
developers. It's from developer impact fees.
But the money goes back to developer?
Yes, Madam Mayor, member.
No.
Well, hold on. I
Goes back.
was trying to look at this. Actually, development impact fees you have to spend within a certain amount of time, Mr.
Right.
Mayor, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm not sure that applies to the in lieu for art fee, but it has to be spent on art. It doesn't refund. It doesn't go back to the general fund at any point. It's money that has to be used and spent for urban art.
Yes, but I was referring to the library mitigation fees.
Oh,
And
okay.
those
Yeah, those
would have,
correct. That's correct. I'm sorry.
yeah.
That's absolutely correct. Those have to be spent within 10 years, assigned to a project, or they have to be refunded to the developers that paid them.
And
So you are talking about the $800,000, I assume, right?
Correct.
How about the other one? That it has been increased drastically.
The art fund, those monies at present do not have to be returned to developers, but they do need to be spent on public art. That is what they were, you know, when the developers paid those fees, that's what they were told the money would be spent on. And so if we don't spend it, it stays in the art fund. And for what purpose? I don't believe the spending will be as high in the future. Per year, I don't want to promise that, but until we get these iconic artworks paid for, I think it's unusually high right now.
And Madam Mayor, members of council, if I may clarify as well. So the Urban Art Fund, as well as the Library Fund and the Library Mitigation Fee Fund, are all completely separate from the general fund. They have their own funding source, not from the general fund. So those are the developer fees, any grants, et cetera. So those monies are tracked separately in Urban Art Fund, Library Fund are both special revenue funds, and the Library Mitigation Fee Fund is a capital improvement projects fund. So we track those completely separate from the general fund, so they have their own funding source.
And I have a question. Did anyone else have a question?
I have one, but go ahead, Madam Mayor.
I just want to make it clear, or to get an answer. The iconic art that you're talking about, Dr. Schaefer, for ArtSoc is when we redo the street.
Yes.
Is that correct? So when we begin you'll be looking at iconic art for ArtSoc while we're doing the construction.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
Madam Mayor,
thank you.
member City Council, just to add to that, the iconic art pieces will be one of the last elements that will complete that paseo, since obviously you don't want to damage during construction. So after the construction is completed, these will be installed.
Okay, Councilmember
Yeah.
Najarian.
Yes, thank you. So just a little background on the Parks and Library Impact Fee. Council first implemented these over 10 years ago, but they were very low. This was a per unit fee that the developers had to pay, reflecting the additional usage that those residents would place on our libraries and on our parks. And it was really substandard. We had done a report that said the impact per unit is somewhere around $8,000 or $9,000 per unit, and we had set it very low. In fact, I think we had set it below about 7,000. So it was a fight. I mean, this was a very difficult challenge to get the rest of the city council to increase those. And I think we put it up to about 18,000 per unit, if I'm not mistaken, which was actually what the actual impacts were. Council had set it just incredibly low, subsidizing these developers. And it was, I'm not sure if Ms. Devine was on the council yet, but this was a dogfight. If you want to see dogfights in city council, that was a dogfight because no one wanted to do it. Finally, I prevailed in getting the council to increase those fees to about the 18,000 per unit mark that it is now. And that is what's funding Gary. That's that 800,000. And I hope that you have good use for that. I know we were speaking recently about the shortcomings of the library remodel and the children's room and all that. So this is, I think this is something you can bank on. It looks like in the foreseeable future that we are going to be adding residential units and continued growth in the city. So put that money to use. You know, let's fix those things that were bad. Although I think we've spent, no offense, I don't think the whole project was managed very well at all. It was about a $20 million remodel, and I think we lacked in some strict project management duties. But I mean, that was done. That's in the past. But going forward, let's program that money. Let's fix what needs to be fixed. Look out a few years, Gary, and get your budgets going. And you know, let's get the library in tip-top shape and use those development funds to the full extent possible.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Brotman, Councilmember Brotman.
Yeah, I would want to say something, I guess, similar to what Councilmember Najarian said with respect to the Urban Arts Fund. So, you know, the money sitting in that fund doesn't do us any good. You know, we're collecting this. Is it 2% that the developers put into the fund, 2% of the value of their development, or is it 1%? I forget.
It's 1%.
It's 1%. Okay.
It's
So
2%. If they're
so
going to
we've
build it
been-
on site, it's 2%. That's probably where you're getting that number from.
Yeah.
But if they're going to just pay the fee, it's 1%.
And typically developers opt
Okay.
for the 1% option.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have questions about that history, but anyway, we won't do that now. But the point is, you know, that money's been coming in, and we have, you said, over $8 million, and having it sit there doesn't do anybody any good. So my feeling is not that we're spending it too fast, is that we're spending it too slowly. And I'm glad now we've got the urban arts plan. So we've got a plan for a lot of that money, right? And it's encouraging to see that it's getting rolled out. There's a consultant, and you're planning to, you know, identify these 10 pieces in the next year. So I would say, you know, from my point of view, I would say go faster. You know, I mean, not faster in the sense that you don't want to make mistakes or you know, do something that we regret, but I mean, do it as expeditiously as we can. My concern is on that side is whether we have the staffing, because you know, I hear kind of through the grapevine that Jennifer
Fukutomo Jones.
Say Jones.
Fukutomo Jones is just completely underwater and already, and we have only, you know, I guess her as a kind of a arts expert on staff. I guess she has some, maybe she has some administrative help, but
She does.
I am concerned thinking about how, you know, as you roll this program out, there's probably a lot of coordination with other departments, public works and parks and community development. And you know, I'm worried that I don't know how that scales. And when you, and I guess a question is, you know, when you look at some other cities and you look at their arts departments, cities, you know, that are really looking to make a difference in the arts or to be a focal for the arts, what kind of teams do they have? I think like West Hollywood has several people in their arts organization, and I don't see how we do what we want to do with the low level of staffing that we have.
Well, I will pass on what I think is a compliment to Jennifer. You know, underwater, or, you know, just a very capable, able-bodied worker. I mean, she's doing an amazing job. She does have clerical help, and I assist her as well. Could we use more staff? We can always use more staff, but, you know, we, a year ago, we had, Jennifer was working only part-time, and now she's full-time. So we've been moving in the right direction, and it's progress. And, you know, that's also why we've engaged occasionally consultants. Jennifer has actually probably leads, well, I don't want to say that, but in the last year, she leads the city in getting interns because she's getting her 5th intern very soon, which is often grant funded. So we're doing whatever we can to assist her in what needs to happen, and I will pass on the compliment to her. But certainly, yes, other cities, Culver City has at least 2 employees in their department. West Hollywood is a bit of an outlier. I mean, they're huge in the public arts, and we actually consulted with one of their people just the other day to assist us with something. So, you know, onward and upward. I appreciate you sharing that, and certainly if council would be open to that in the future. Another option would be looking into the ordinance, which strictly prohibits paying for staff out of the ordinance. And in fact, we've had to, you know, pay library staff to watch over art exhibits that have been on display. We've paid library staff to do other things. We've had to pay, you know, public works staff out of library funds because the ordinance prohibits the payment of any staff out of it. So if council would be open to something like that, we certainly would love to bring that to you and look at possibly funding staff or having at least the ability to do that on occasion out of the Urban Art Fund. It is done in other cities, so.
Yeah. I would like to, I mean, you know, not for this budget cycle probably, but let's look at, you know, benchmarking and look at, you know, developer funds. Like, is that 1%, you know, the right number, or is it too low? Why is it 2% on site and 1% in lieu? And maybe if we can get some more money going from that into that fund, we can pay staff. I just think we should maybe take that back as an item sometime over the next 6 months and look at, you know, what longer term, what are we going to need and how do we get there? If we really want to be an arts destination, it just doesn't seem like we're in the right position to do that right now. And that's not, yeah, when I said underwater, I didn't mean anything negative about Jennifer. I
didn't
hope
think
that
so.
came across. I meant all positive. What, you know, I haven't interacted with her personally very much at all, but I hear, you know, from a lot of people I know in the community, I hear only the best things about her, but I hear that she's really caring a lot, and we don't want to burn her out and have her leave or anything like that. So I just want to make sure we're giving her all the support she needs, and we're you know, we're set up for the future.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Member City Council, I'll just add,
Yes.
as you are well aware, we are in a hiring freeze currently because of our budgetary situation. However, when the time comes, and I'll work with Gary, when the time comes that we need to make adjustments in staffing to be able to deliver these very important items for art, public art in the city as per the council's priority, then we'll look into boosting the staffing if necessary.
Okay,
Mayor-
thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just want to add my own brief comment to this, and I promise I won't be long. I commend everything that you guys are doing. Good job. Keep it up. I think you're on the right track. Whether we want to spend more money on this or less, time will tell, but just at least achieve what you've set out to achieve right now. And as far as timing, I'm more concerned with you getting it right rather than getting it done quickly. My concern is how we define or how we will decide what is considered iconic art. I know that hopefully our Arts and Culture Commission will be involved in this, but I also want to stress the importance of inclusion and diversity, because the art world, like anything else, is rift with its own biases, its own prejudices as to what is considered worthy or deemed worthy of recognition based on also whichever coast you happen to live on and the circles you run in. Yet we have a community that's very culturally diverse, and oftentimes the individuals who are artists in their own particular communities are overlooked by the greater art world, quote unquote. So we have a large Asian, Korean, Filipino population. We have Armenian artists. We have African-American artists and Latino artists, and we should include all of those individuals in this grand plan of ours. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. That is our plan, and that has been communicated to the consultant, who's a minority-owned business.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer.
Thank you.
Excellent work.
Thank you.
Go ahead. You have more?
Next up is just a little focus on our library fund. This is primarily made up of library grants, and the increase here is actually due to, as I mentioned earlier, a state library grant that we were successful in applying for. We've actually been quite successful with those in this last few years. Next up is the Art Fund, which we've talked about quite a bit already. So I'll just add that other planned items in addition to the iconic art are, but aren't limited to, reinvigorating the city's mural program, the popular Adams Square Mini Park gas station, art exhibits, the Beyond the Box program, the brand concert series, which despite the pandemic, we are committed to bringing back in some form this coming summer. It will most likely be late summer and will certainly be abbreviated just due to the pandemic. We also have smaller concerts planned this fall in the Arts and Entertainment District, and of course, more. And this is just a visual. Artem Manukian participated in a program. It was a virtual program. He did a concert. I actually re-listened to it yesterday. It's lovely and beautiful. It's available through the Arts and Culture website, and this was through a program called where he was interviewed in a podcast and then also did a concert. We're very fortunate to get him. We also talked about the Library Mitigation Fee Fund, so I think we've covered that well. This obviously will go towards improvements at Central Library, including the children and teen spaces. And as you're aware, you recently approved, and thank you so much for doing so, the architecture firm RFP, and also have high hopes based on the conversations you all had around Measure S. So we are working with the selected architect already and with Public Works in order to gain public input and begin the design process. What's next at Library Arts and Culture? In addition to the children's and teen space renovation, long-term goals for the facility improvements at all of our libraries include lighting, security, and temperature control upgrades to the Brand Gallery in order to host prestigious traveling exhibits, identifying a new location for the Adams Square Library. As Council knows, the library is in a leased space, and we've negotiated an extension to give us time to plan for a new location. Pacific Park and Casa Verdugo locations will be due for renovations and refreshes within the next 1 to 3 years, giving us the opportunity to modernize these spaces, increase flexibility, and address any long-term maintenance issues. Iconic public art, as we've discussed, including murals. The inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism initiatives will continue. The library, on behalf of the Arts and Culture Commission, is engaging a consultant to evaluate our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts and assist with planning next steps. IDEA, as we like to call it, was explicitly added to our strategic plan, and we want to work towards becoming a leader in this area. Now that all elementary school students in GUSD have library cards, we're excited to expand the efforts to intermediate and high school students who don't yet have library cards. And then finally, outreach. In order to meet our ambitious goals in our strategic plan, we need to engage with people who have not used the library in a long time and communities who have not always felt welcome at libraries. Outreach will help us meet our community members where they work, learn, and play, bringing the library to them. We plan to launch a grant-funded, innovative outreach vehicle to aid in our efforts in the coming year. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. Any questions from my colleagues? Thank you for the report. Very interesting, and you are certainly covering a lot of different programs, and we are very impressed, I think, with all that you've been doing during the pandemic, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, what's next, Mr. Galanian?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members, City Council. Next up is Glendale Water and Power, GWP, our largest department with the largest budget in the city. For the sake of efficiency and moving through the slides, John Tactalian, Acting General Manager, will do the presentation. However, Craig Cunin, Mike DeGhetto, Dan Scorza, and Mark Young, and their staff who've been instrumental in putting this presentation together, are here and available to respond to questions. John?
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor Devine, members of the City Council. Give me one quick sec here. Very good. I'm John Tactalian, Deputy City Manager and Acting General Manager of Water and Power. As Mr. Golanian just mentioned, before I really get into this presentation, I wanted to acknowledge and thank our 4 Assistant General Managers for putting this presentation together. We have in the audience here Mark Young, Craig Keenan, Mike DeGhetto, and Dan Scorza. Without them, much of this information would have been very difficult to compile over the last couple weeks. So GWP is a department that provides safe and reliable water and electric services for the citizens of Glendale in a cost-efficient, transparent, affordable, and sustainable manner. That is their mission. That's what they strive towards on a daily basis. The department is primarily made up of 6 main divisions. You have your Business Services Division, which is responsible for the utility finance, communications and marketing, energy efficiency, renewable energy, low-income customer programs, utility IT and modernization, customer service, and the fiber business on the GWP side. The next division is the Electrical Services Division, which is responsible for directing the electrical system planning, management, operations, and maintenance aspects. Our Water Services Division, which has oversight of all the activities associated with the water service, including the planning and design of water engineering projects, construction, maintenance, operation, transmission, treatment, storage, and distribution of the city's water infrastructure. The 4th section would be the Power Management Services Division, which similarly is responsible for planning, directing, and controlling power management activities, the power plant operations, maintenance, and the energy and capacity purchases and sales. The 5th section is the Administrative Services section that provides support to GWP management in the areas of general administration, employee relations, and special projects. And last but not least is our Environmental and Safety Division, which oversees the operations of the city's landfill, the stormwater, and other related programs. So we started off 2020 in GWP just like any other year. Frankly, the operation hadn't really changed in a number of decades. Employees typically came to work on a daily basis, worked in cubicles close to one another. But that all changed as soon as March of 2020 came about. What we had to do was immediately adapt. So when the world shut down, we essentially went 100% remote. 100% of our operations were digital, and that was primarily due to the support that we received from our ISD staff. When our customers had trouble paying their bills, GWP worked alongside our Glendale City Council to develop bill assistance programs, to place moratoriums on shutoffs and late fees, and we also worked alongside council to defer the electric and water rate increases that were set to take place in 2020. Since reliability truly is the operations bedrock, the organization reorganized the field staff so they can keep the water flowing and electricity on for all of our customers while maintaining safety standards and protocols to keep our own workforce safe. Sustainability is a primary goal of GWP, and what we did over the course of this year and what we'll learn a little bit more in this presentation is all the different projects that we took on to implement greater sustainability within our own infrastructure and service delivery. And finally, automation innovation is our future. So what we've done is continue to pursue new cost-effective automation innovation technologies that we'll talk about in a bit. So I just mentioned those 6 principles in summary, and the next 6 slides will really focus on each of those principles in part. With respect to going digital and remote, even though our employees were working off-site, that didn't mean that they were working or not working, quite frankly, at home. Since March of 2020, the COVID shutdown occurred, our customer service operators have handled over 85,000 calls. They've responded to over 12,600 emails, and they've processed close to 620 customer bills. Our business system support kept our IT systems running up to date. Over the past year, they successfully completed over 100 projects, many of them major system upgrades, while responding to about 1,600 service requests. The marketing communication operation kept our customers informed. Through their marketing efforts, we were able to reach 88,000 customers on 5 separate occasions with our newsletter. And in that process, in terms of was it effective or was it not, we're proud to say that we gained over 1,000 new followers on Twitter since March of 2020. Our utility finance processed an estimated 750 power purchase invoices valued at close to $100 million, completed 5 SCAPA bond refundings, refinanced the 2008 water bonds, which saved Glendale $12 million in interest, completed the annual S&P Global and Fitch credit rating reviews, finalized the electric and water annual reports, and completed the annual bond disclosures. And finally, the fiber side of the business completed the design of and installation of the fiber backhaul, and with the support of the city attorney's office, we've drafted new agreements for fiber services and fees for the city council to consider later this year. With respect to our second principle, we help maintain affordability for our customers throughout this pandemic. Immediately following the shutdown orders, customers began to have financial difficulties in paying their bills. So we worked alongside council to immediately place moratoriums on shutoffs and late fees. And in doing so, we also created a number of public benefit programs. The primary one was the GWP CARES program, which provided bill relief for residential and business customers who were adversely affected by the stay-at-home orders and the subsequent business shutdowns. And finally, as we mentioned earlier, we worked with council to defer the electric and water rate increases that were set to take place in 2020. With respect to reliability, our field staff were placed on special rotations immediately to ensure that our lights stayed on and the water kept flowing. Throughout the pandemic, they responded to all the water and electric emergencies as they normally have, as if nothing had changed. And they continued to make the essential repairs and upgrades to the system. Planned outages were scheduled in the early mornings and on weekends so that they wouldn't interfere with our school children who had shifted to going to school from home, as well as all of our customers who had resorted to teleworking as a result of the pandemic. We mentioned that sustainability is a primary principle that we adhere to in GWP, and in doing so, we're proud to restate that over the course of this last year, GWP earned the Smart Energy Provider designation, which is a designation given by the American Public Powers Association for agencies who have demonstrated commitment to and proficiency in energy efficiency, distributed generation, and environmental initiatives that support a goal of providing low-cost, high-quality, safe, and reliable electric services. We're proud to say of all of the 1,800 public power utilities in the nation, GWP is one of only 275 to possess this designation. Again, over the course of the year, some of the things that we worked on in terms of sustainability and clean energy programs included the completion of the Franklin Demand Response Program contract, which launched in April 2019. We completed the Lime Commercial Energy Efficiency Program contract, which is set to launch in August. And we continue working to complete the Sunrun Virtual Power Plant Program contract with the goal of launching sometime later this summer. We also entered into 3 long-term power purchase agreements for renewable energy. The first of note is the ELAN project, which is expected to provide Glendale with 25 megawatts of renewable solar energy and 12.5 megawatts of battery storage starting in January of 2023. The Whitegrass number 1 geothermal project, which is slated to provide us with 3 megawatts of geothermal power annually, and Star Peak, which is another geothermal project set to deliver 12.5 megawatts of power to the city of Glendale on an annual basis. We talk about innovation and automation across the organization quite regularly, and GWP is really no different. We strive to be at the forefront of this effort. And in doing so, over the course of the last year, the business support section has continued to upgrade the GWP system in this regard. Of particular note, we implemented the new GWP billing and payment web portal and integrated voice recognition payment system. So people, when they call, can make their payment speaking to a computer as opposed to a live person if they choose. We've migrated all the GWP enterprise applications and servers, as well as all of our users, desktops, and file servers to the Glendale CA domain for ease of management and security. We've implemented new secure industrial control systems, and we're in the process of implementing the electrical outage management system, which is scheduled to come online in June of 2021. Those 6 principles primarily make up the qualitative aspects of the organization's day-to-day activities. The next several slides will focus on the quantitative aspects of what we do and how we do it. As you can see, I think Mr. Golani mentioned that GWP is the largest organization or department within the organization and has one of the largest budgets to go along. We have a proposed budget of $366 million next year, which is primarily made up of our salaries, benefits, M&O, maintenance and operation, capital improvement programs or projects, capital outlay, and our transfers out to the general fund. I will tell you that of the $366 million we see on this slide, the largest chunk of that is in the electric operation, which is represented by $288,000. Followed at a distant second by water at about $69 million. Our public benefit charge program, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a couple of slides, has about $8.7 million associated with it, and our fiber operation for 21-22 has about $170,000 in it. In terms of staffing, again, large operation. Last year, with our adopted budget, we had a total of 330 full-time equivalent positions. What we're proposing for 21-22 is 343 full-time equivalent positions. It's really important, however, to note that this does not represent the addition of 13 or so salaried positions. In fact, the 343 positions represents a reduction of 1 full-time salaried position in GWP, but the addition of 14 hourly employees, 10 of which were part of a negotiation with IBEW as part of our desire to contract out a portion of our 4 kV to 12 kV conversion project. 2 of the additional hourlies will assist with new clean energy programs, and the final 2 will assist support our water field crews. Getting into a little bit more granular detail of GWP's composition, budget composition, you'll see that our proposed 21-22 budget has a proposed number of $366,000. What we've done on the left-hand side is listed at all of the 10 individual accounts that make up GWP. In the parentheses next to some of those accounts, you'll see the technical term for them, but those technical terms really don't describe what that account is utilized for. It's stated that way, I believe, in the charter. That's why we have to state it that way. But we went ahead and put some actual descriptors in the language before it. What you'll notice is that, again, as of the $366,000 there, the largest component of that is on the electric maintenance and operations side, followed by, and that's account number 5820. But if you go down to accounts 5920 and 5930, you'll see that the water operations, maintenance operation, and the CIP program make up the next largest chunk of that. And we'll talk about some of these accounts in a little bit more detail. So if there's any questions that I don't cover in the next few slides, we can come back to it if you don't mind. The first account to identify a little bit more in depth would be the Electric Public Benefit Fund. We have a proposed budget of about $8.7 million in this fund, and this is a fund that's actually set up in the Glendale Municipal Code. The PBC revenues that we receive are maintained separately from all the other funds and used for a variety of different programs that serve one of the following four purposes. They could be used for cost-effective demand-side management services to promote energy efficiency and energy conservation, or they could be used for new investments in renewable energy resources and technologies. They could also be used for research, development, and demonstration projects. And finally, they can be used for services provided for low-income electricity customers. This is a fund that has had quite a lot of conversation in years past in terms of what it is, how we get the funds in this account, what we utilize them for. So I'll take a moment to talk about some of the programs that the public benefit charge funds. There's 14 programs thus far, and we're proposing 3 additional new programs that I'll talk about in a few minutes. But the 14 that we do currently include the Glendale Care Program, which provides $15 a month as a bill discount to income-eligible customers. Our Guardian Program, which provides bill discounts for households with special medically prescribed electric-powered medical equipment. Our Helping Hands Program, which provides a flat $150 per month low-income applicant for electric payment or deposit assistance. Our Business Energy Solutions Program, which provides rebates for large business customer energy efficiency programs. Our Home Energy Reports, which have been reports sent out to all customers of GWP since 2009, and talk about how they compare to their neighboring households of similar size and composition. Our School Conservation Education Program, which is a cooperative between Glendale Unified School District, private schools, and GWP, where we go out to educate 6th grade science students in the areas of energy and water conservation. We have an online marketplace program that PBC funds, which provides customers an online marketplace to purchase discounted energy efficiency and water conservation measures. We have the Laundry to Landscape program, which provides a $500 rebate for residential customers who install a laundry to landscape system so that the water from their laundry doesn't go into the sewer system. Rather, it's used to irrigate their landscaping. We have the Smart Home Energy and Water Saving Upgrades, which is a program that evaluates the efficiency of a customer's home, installs free energy and water saving devices when available or applicable in their situations. We also have our Smart Home Rebates that'll provide rebates to customers for a variety of energy conservation and water conservation measures, things like energy efficient ceiling fans or low flow toilets. Our Smart Home Display and Smart Thermostat program is funded out of PBC, which provides customers with a smart home display that'll give you your real-time electricity usage and the cost per megawatt hour. To make you more cognizant of what your consumption rate is and help reduce what that consumption rate is. But the Smart Thermostat also allows you to set different programs. It comes pre-built with some programs to help you be more energy efficient in your heating and cooling of your home. We have the Solar Schoolhouse program, which provides GUSD and local private schools an array of photovoltaic training and activities for educators. And finally, we have the Tree Power program that PBC funds, which provides eligible customers with up to 3 shade trees to reduce their cooling costs. I mentioned earlier that we are proposing 3 new programs out of PBC for the upcoming year. The first is an update to the GWP Cares program that we are calling Back on Track. That would help customers who have been impacted by COVID and fallen behind on their payments to set up a system to catch up in time so that we don't face delinquencies or the need for shutoffs. The next program would be the Solar to Energy Storage program for business customers. That's a program where we're looking to incentivize business owners to install solar and energy storage on their premises in exchange for allowing GWP to control some of that energy storage and shift the load if it becomes necessary to balance out our needs on those hot days. And the final one is residential energy storage, which would work identical to the way the business storage would work, as I just described. The next funding source
Can I
is,
ask, Mayor Devine? You're on mute.
Right. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Councilman.
is it okay? I want to ask about the public benefit charge program. Is that going to come to us separately for a detailed discussion?
this was the planned portion of that presentation. If we want to get into any detail, this would be the time to do it. If there was a,
No, I think last year, I think we had a separate discussion where we saw all the detailed breakdown. We saw the programs. There was a lot more detail because I'm not prepared to discuss it now, but this is a very important part of the budget, and I want the opportunity for us, for council, to really look at these programs and discuss whether we think there should be any changes.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members, City Council, if that's the council's desire, we can certainly bring that back as a standalone item and agendize it in the future.
Yeah, before we lock it in for this year, I would definitely like to have a full, detailed discussion on the PBC programs. I think we've done that in the past.
And so, Councilmember Brotman, what you're asking for is an itemized report on each of the programs?
Well, I think what I remember us doing before is having a discussion on all the programs, and the budget overall is really a separate discussion. And I believe it's gone to the GWP Commission first.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Brotman, you are correct. I don't know about the commission, going to the commission part, though. However, we do present it to council during study sessions as well as adoption. So we could bring this back on May 20th when we do all of our follow-up and budget summary for you.
Councilman Brotman, I will
Okay, but I
add,
think it's very, very important this go to the GWP Commission.
Councilman Brotman, I will add that we had our GWP Commission meeting last Monday, and a commitment that I made to them was that we would provide the commission with a presentation of the same presentation we're providing to you today prior to budget adoption, so that if there was any direction or any additional feedback, that could be shared with council in due time. So we will be having a special meeting of the commission. I'm looking at Craig. Do we have the date yet? We were polling the commission members to see which day would work best for them. It would be at least a week prior to council getting the final budget presentation in June, so that it would give them enough time.
Okay, so they'll go through in detail the PBC programs.
We most certainly can provide them a little bit more detail on the PBC programs, yes.
I would like to see that and have them weigh in, and then have us discuss them. These are important programs and might require some tweaking, and I want us to be able to weigh in and give our direction on that.
That is the plan as of right now, with the commission. So, do we have a date yet? You said we believe it's June 1st, but I'll double check on that.
And you'll bring this back on May 20th, the itemized, the more specific report?
Well, Madam Mayor, member City Council, if this goes in front of the commission, GWP Commission on June 1st, then we'll have to bring it back with their recommendation to council after that date.
Okay.
Could you hold a special commission meeting? You just said something like
yeah,
you were trying to schedule it. Why not hold a special one and then bring it to us?
That is the special GWP Commission meeting, Councilmember Brotman.
June, but there's a normal one in June. The first Monday of June is the normal. The normal one.
Councilmember Brotman, we'll get you the date. I know that as of yesterday, we were still polling the commission members to hold a special meeting prior to the next regular scheduled meeting. I don't know what that date is, if it's been pinned down yet by our administrative staff. But your understanding is correct. Our desire is to provide the commission with the same presentation in the detail that you just asked for in advance of this coming back to the council, so that we can get their feedback and bring it back to you with some of that insight.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, as Ms. Flynn mentioned, the follow-up item, the study session that will include follow-up items is on May 20th. So again, Mr. Taktalian noted that we'll have to check on the availability of the commissioners to see if we can take the item to them prior to the May 20th study session.
And if I may ask, if that's not possible, you can still bring this to council, to us on May 20th for further discussion. Right, correct?
Yes, we can certainly do that, but we may not have the benefit of GWP Commission seeing this item and providing recommendations. It all depends on their availability.
We will make
Running
every attempt to
against
do
time.
that. Yeah.
But we'll do our best to schedule it before the 20th.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Arm,
Next.
thank you. Arm, can we go back to the slides? So I believe we were on slide 35. Oh. All right, so the next fund that we wanted to touch base on was the Electric Works Revenue Fund, which is a technical term, but that's really nothing more than the electric maintenance and operation budget, the largest budget that we have. With regards to this fund, this year's budget request represents an increase of just under $28 million for the current year. The reason for that is primarily due to a number of renewable efforts. In fact, some of the about $11.5 million is due to higher purchase power costs, but $3.1 million is due to higher contractual services as a result of the new Lime and Franklin Clean Energy Program contracts. We also have $2.9 million in increased carbon allowances and $1.9 million in increased depreciation and gas depletion. In addition to the amounts that I just mentioned right now, there's also about $1.6 million in low carbon fuel standards funding to support a wide variety of electric vehicle programs. Some of those programs that we're proposing include $500,000 for the Clean Fuel Rewards Program, which would provide Glendale residents up to $1,500 to purchase or lease a new light-duty electric vehicle. Another program, it would be the $100,000 for the electric bookmobile for the city library, and that's really to promote electric vehicle adoption through education efforts. $410,000 for the Bring Your Own Charger program. This is a program established to encourage people to what we would do is utilize our AMI smart meters to encourage people to charge their electric vehicles at night. We're proposing $100,000 for the electric vehicle guest drive event, which would provide electric vehicle experiences and education to customers to help facilitate purchase of an electric vehicle for those who either may never have been exposed to the concept or were on the fence about purchasing electric versus hybrid versus fossil fuel powered for their next vehicle. We also have about $65,000 scheduled for customer awareness programs to provide customers opportunities to purchase and lease electric vehicles in the city of Glendale. Next one would be about $120,000 for the mobile electric vehicle charging station. This is an interesting turnkey autonomous renewable charger with photovoltaic cells that is movable. It's transportable and has the ability to charge vehicles. I believe it can charge 2 vehicles at one time and can be moved around the city from place to place. And finally, $325,000 for electric vehicle charger rebates, which sort of speaks for itself. This would be for people who are purchasing the electric vehicles and have to install the chargers in their homes. This offers a rebate to help offset some of that cost and make electric vehicle adoption that much easier.
Can I ask a question?
Mr. Brotman?
Yeah, there's, John, there's a lot of detail here that we haven't been provided separately. I can't just, I mean, you just going through all these things, it's way too much. I would like to have a detailed breakdown in a report or something of all these things you're describing. I have lots of questions and I don't want to take up, tons of time right now. asking about each of these programs. Because there's some things, I want to understand more about the carbon allowances and what's going on there. I mean, maybe that one you can address here, but the thing about EV charging at night, that's something that I definitely want to dig into. So, I mean, we could do it offline, but there's way too much here to absorb, and just running through it very quickly, at least doesn't help me much.
Councilmember Brotman, I understand, and I will say that we can most certainly have an offline conversation if you prefer, but we're also prepared to speak to every one of these today if that's council's desire. We have our 4 AGMs here who can provide the supporting documentation for it, if that's what you would like to do. So if you have specific questions about carbon allowances or the off-peak charging of vehicles, we can have our staff come up.
Well, let me ask, I'll leave it to Mayor Devine to decide how she wants to run this. I don't, we could spend a lot of time on this, and I'm, conscious of chewing up.
Madam Mayor, if I may make a suggestion, perhaps we can have briefings with council members on these items separately. Obviously before the May 20th study session and, of course, the adoption. If these questions are extensive in nature and going to take up the rest of the study session, perhaps. But it's entirely up to council.
Right. And how does council feel? How do my colleagues feel about that? About having a private a briefing on each one of these items for water and power?
I think that would help me. I think here it would just take too long.
Councilmember Najarian, Agajanian, Kasakian, would you like to weigh in on this?
I'll take a private briefing. That's okay with me.
Okay. Agajanian?
I will take private conversation on.
Okay. All right. So, and Councilmember Kasakian, are you in agreement?
I will, I could do either. I have no specific preference.
Okay.
All
right,
I
so,
do think that there are some things that do warrant the public knowing about it as well, but I do think that in some of these issues where we go into extreme details, it's probably best for every council member to delve into those to the level of their own comfort so they can feel comfortable during these public discussions. And I think that there's important things to raise as well. One thing, Mayor, while I am speaking, I'd like to add is I would like to know if you want to answer this now or later, Mr. Takhtalian, how our city is doing in terms of rolling out, and you touched upon this, but I want to know what our charging station installation throughout the city looks like and how we compare to other cities. Thank you.
Mayor Devine, members of council, I'm going to look over to one of the AGMs and ask them to come up to address that particular question, because specifically I'm not aware of exactly what the answer is off the top of my head.
So, Madam Mayor, council members, I'm Craig Keenan, Assistant General Manager of Business Services. Regarding charging stations, we have about 6 of them.
Who will be speaking, please?
It's not on?
Craig.
Sorry about that. The microphone wasn't on over there. Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Craig Keenan. I'm the Assistant General Manager of Business Services. We do have a plan for rolling out EV charging stations. I believe we have about 8 or 10 in the field right now. There's 6 of them here in the parking garage. We do have plans to put a high voltage charger down at the transportation center. We have one outside of City Hall. It has been a little bit of a challenge rolling it out. Part of that is, the resources to adequately staff these programs and get these chargers out there. I mean, I have one person right now who does all the PBC programs, the charging station programs, and so we're doing our best.
I would like
How many are
to.
you planning on having out there in the near future?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
How many charging stations, new charging stations, are you planning on having around the city in the near future? Just that one at the transportation center, or?
No, we have plans to basically double the number of charging stations we currently have out there.
Okay.
When
And
we,
the problem is, what is the problem with?
well, I have a limited staff to actually get these things out into the field. It takes time to find the locations, to do the design, to get the permits. So it's somewhat of a laborious process right now to get this done. But we're doing the best we can. I know we have about 10 out there right now.
Is that including the units that are at City Hall?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
in reality, we have about 4 around the city, because you mentioned there was about 6 here at City Hall.
There's 6 in the parking garage. There's a high voltage charger outside of City Hall. I believe we added 2 more lower voltage level 2 chargers. We have plans to put some in various parking garages around the city, when we had some plans to do some chargers down at the transportation center.
I would recommend that all of our parks have at least one station, or the
That-
sports complex have a couple.
I would agree.
Places where people are spending passive time and they're there for a while.
We do have a plan. I'll be happy to provide that plan.
Sure.
And do you have that budgeted in the, do you have those budgeted in this current budget?
Yes, we have, I believe, $500,000 in our capital budget to fund EV chargers around the city, in addition to the LCFS low carbon fuel standard monies to support EVs.
Well, I mean, the number of electric vehicles, Madam Mayor, will increase, and I think that whatever we can do to make sure that we're setting up these stations faster than at the rate that we're doing right now, I think is warranted. I would like Mr. Keenan to see what the comparisons are with other cities as to how they've rolled it out and what we're doing to not allow us to roll it out at a similar pace. Thank you.
And I have a question about the portable charging unit. Is that, is there a reason for that? Is that like a pilot project to see where they're necessary or where they will be used? I mean, I'm not sure I understand the benefit of a portable charging station.
That is Craig Keenan Business, AGM Business, Business Services. That mobile charger is more like a pilot type program. So we can go around and say the city has buses or vehicles that need charging out in the field, and there isn't a charging station near there. We can roll this out over to meet them someplace and charge up their vehicle. Or if other people in the city who have EVs who need emergency charging, we can go charge them. It's to help people get over that fear of going someplace without having a gasoline engine to get them home if their batteries run out.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so the bottom line here is that you will provide a briefing upon request of council members on the specifics of our public benefits program, correct?
Mayor
That's the
Devine,
bottom
members of
line here.
council. Mayor Devine, members of council, that's correct. But I will also say that based on the feedback provided by council today, we'll also provide, we'll delve into greater detail with the commission when we take this to them in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you very much, John.
Okay.
And if I could just add, just so we're clear on the record, those briefings are for the purpose of providing information to council, allowing council members to ask questions. No direction is ever provided to those briefings, and that will be subject to a further council discussion presumably on May 20th.
Yes, on the May 20th, we will have a number of follow-ups, and it'll include the items related to our discussion today.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll get the presentation back up. We're almost done here. I believe we were on slide 37. Yes. So the final account that we wanted to focus on was our water depreciation fund, which, similar to the electric depreciation fund, is the water's version of the the capital improvement projects fund. With respect to that particular fund, we're proposing $11.6 million in projects in 21-22, and that will fund about 14 new water CIP projects and programs, 5 new public works building improvement programs, and a number of capital outlay purchases for our water operation. Specifically, $5.7 million of that is with regards to our pipeline management program, $2.1 million for a pump unit replacement program, and $1.2 million for our water system optimization. So with that, we look forward to what comes next for GWP. Some of the primary goals, the big ticket items kind of hanging in the near future, is the completion of our Grayson Energy Center project. That's followed very closely and similarly by our efforts to go 100% clean by 2045. And in doing so, we plan on achieving that through fully implementing our new Sunrun, Lime, and Franklin clean energy programs, and continuing to develop our new solar and energy efficiency programs that we described in the report today. We also look to promote electric vehicle adoption through our electric vehicle programs and infrastructure. Much of that comes from education, promotion, as well as all the different rebates that we talked about offering through our various PBC funds. We also look to completing 100% of our planned 4 kV to 12 kV conversion project. That is a long-term project, one that we have shifted the model on slightly, where it was all done in-house by our existing staff. We have now come to agreement with IBW to contract a portion of that out on an annual basis to help us catch up over the course of the next many years. It is a multi-year program. And the final thing that we look forward to in the upcoming year is completing 100% of our planned water pipeline replacements, which, as you know, are critical to our water utility infrastructure, and oftentimes are the infrastructure that goes unseen and I don't want to say forgotten about, but not realized in terms of its importance within the community. But rest assured, it is at the forefront of our minds and something that we work towards on a regular basis to keep up and improve. That concludes GWP's presentation. Again, I want to thank our assistant general managers who are in the audience today, who can speak to the specifics as they've done, if council has any additional questions to ask.
I would like to ask, Madam Mayor, that we consider agendizing or at one point bringing forward a report as to what recent declarations of renewed drought situation in California will have as far as an impact on our city, our residents. I think we had done a number of positive things in terms of the conservation, reuse, and then I think it lulled people into a sense of we're in a better place, and it looks like we're just going back into a period of necessary conservation and controlling the amount of usage. So it doesn't have to happen now, and I know it may not be the appropriate time to go into it, but since the declaration was made just a week or a few weeks ago, I think it's appropriate for us to have that discussion sooner rather than later, especially as the hotter months come upon us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Kasakian, and I think that's something that we can agendize for council in the evening so that the public can hear it, and I would appreciate if you would bring that up maybe tonight, okay? Thank you. Councilmember Brotman.
Yeah, a few questions for John on timing. The Shoal Biogas Project, when do we expect to, I guess, see the response to the comments that were submitted? It's been quite a long time, and I'm not sure if there's been a delay for a particular reason or just there were a lot of comments, but I think it's taking longer than we expected. And I know I'm getting a lot of questions, so I think the public wants to know when we can expect the release of the final EIR. I guess would be the document that would respond to all the input, right?
Yes, Councilman Brotman, members of the City Council. That's a good question. It's one actually that we were discussing yesterday afternoon with GWP and our City Attorney's Office. And we have Mark Young here who can get into the details of that.
Madam Mayor, members of council, we're diligently working on being able to answer every one of those questions, which is a requirement in the environmental impact report. We anticipate being able to come to council with that report, I would assume August of this year.
Okay, and if I may, when would it be released for us to start reviewing and for the public to start reviewing? Because I'm just saying that because it's going to take quite a bit of time to go through those materials. I've kind of been holding off because I want to see the responses to the comments, not just read the comments themselves.
I would have to get back with you. I believe that we're supposed to be getting to council in August or September with that report, and I'm not exactly sure when all the answers to the questions will be available for review.
Okay, I hope we have enough time. That's all. I hope it's not, the normal. We have the 1 week before it comes to council to review it because it's complicated.
I agree with you, and I'm pretty sure, I am guaranteeing you that we're not going to have this 1 week turnaround on that report.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of City, Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
I apologize. We will, like Mr. Young mentioned, we will give council sufficient time for review. We'll have briefings before we release the report to the public, so you'll have plenty of time.
Okay, and if I could, I have a few others. Similar, the Grayson, the question of the reciprocal, what are we calling them? Reciprocal internal combustion engines? Is that the right term?
That's correct.
Yes.
When do we expect that to come? Because there's there's going to be a subsequent EIR. Can you just run through what the schedule for that is?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but is this the appropriate time to be asking these questions about the upcoming reports?
We were not prepared to speak to the specifics of reports that are upcoming or the timing of specific EIRs.
Okay.
But if there,
Okay.
I mean,
So-
again, Councilmember Brotman, if there's a desire, we'd be happy to sit down with you and both learn what those questions are and share them with you publicly at a future meeting, just so we don't misspeak.
Okay. That's fine. I do get a lot of questions on the timing, so I want to make sure that I understand it and the public knows. So there's that, and also the COSA. And we can come back, but I wanted to know where we were with the timing on the COSA.
I really think those are things, Councilmember Brotman, that you can speak with Mr. Tuktalian in a personal off-camera conversation, get those dates straightened out, and then we can, when the dates are finalized, we can get that report to council. Is that agreeable?
Okay, yes, it is. Thank you.
And Madam Mayor,
Thank you.
if I
Yes,
may.
Mr. Juan.
Yeah, as you know, since December, we have been providing monthly reports on the status of, if not all, most of these initiatives and programs and projects. And the next monthly report will be out this week. So there'll be details of those items as requested by Councilmember Brotman in that memo, hopefully in the next couple of days.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So does that conclude the report on, from GWP?
Madam Mayor, just brief.
Councilmember Najarian?
Yeah, just briefly, just two things. Number one, the GWP scam is continuing. I got a call yesterday from GWP saying that if I don't pay my bill in 1 hour, they're cutting off my utilities. Needless to say, I had a rather colorful discussion with the person at the other end of the phone. So folks, we're not cutting off utilities, and GWP doesn't call it to threaten like that. The second point is, we all heard about the cyber attack on the Colonial gas pipeline affecting the East Coast. There are renewed threats against the Western electrical grid, which could put us in a bad shape because of our reliance on transmission. So privately, I would like to hear, obviously not publicly, I would like, as part of that briefing, to learn a little bit about our cybersecurity defenses, and in a fail situation, what our plan B is to generate electricity locally without the grid feeding us.
Yes, we can, Madam Mayor, Member City Council, Councilmember Najarian, we can definitely include those, what you requested in the briefings with council.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, we move on to.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Yes, Madam Mayor, Member City Council. Next up is one of our other larger departments by number of staff members, employees. And this department is one of the two public safety departments that have a tremendous impact on the quality of life for our residents and businesses, namely the police department. Chief Pavlidis will go through the presentation, and his command staff and budget liaison staff are available in the audience to respond to your questions. Chief?
Good morning, Mayor Devine and members of council. And as said, we'll work through several slides here and talk about the police department. But kind of like City Manager Galania mentioned, I'd just like to acknowledge the staff that really helped put all this together. And that's Deputy Chief Tim Feely, Captains Andrew Jenks and Robert William, Commander Cheryl Davis-Moore, and our Public Safety Business Administrator, Allison Finch, who've worked very tirelessly. And I owe them actually, that and the management team, a lot more thanks as we talk about how we had to adapt over the last year. Glendale Police Department is a full-service police department. We provide policing services to address, obviously, crime-related issues, but also quality-of-life issues in the city of Glendale. As I've talked about many, many times, not only do we sort of provide that traditional policing, but we're also steeped in the traditions of community policing in building those partnerships with our community and working together in order to have a safe and healthy community. In order to do that, we break the department into several divisions. And so, as I said, the smallest one being the Office of the Chief. But just to kind of walk through what we do, our Administrative Services Division is really kind of one of our most diverse divisions. It handles most of what our professional staff, and that's led by Commander Cheryl Davis-Moore, our Civilian Division Commander. That handles communications, records, our lab, property, budget, finance, all of those types of operations. Our Field Service Division is probably our largest division. It is what most people see on the front lines. That covers our patrol officers. Almost, not quite everybody, but almost everybody that you see in a uniform is handled by our Field Services Division, responds to calls for services. The Investigative Services Divisions, basically, if you can think of detectives, they're the ones who do all of the follow-up investigations for the department. It will consist of our Criminal Investigations Bureau, so it's the people who will do robbery, homicide, dealing with assaults, property crimes, and also our Special Investigations Bureau, which deals with vice and narcotics and organized crime. Then our Support Services Division works very closely with the Office of the Chief, primarily because it has our Professional Standards Bureau, so it deals with recruiting, hiring, retention, and internal investigations, and it also handles traffic and air support. And then the Office of the Chief handles the general overall guidance for the department, along with our public information operations. So, where did we start in 2020? It was actually going to be kind of a normal year. 2019 had been fairly busy, and 2020 was on track to be a fairly busy year. We were tracking our normal crime trends. We were working with our community. As you can see from the photograph, as we were coming off the holiday season, of working with some of the people in our community that needed an extra hand in conjunction with GPOA, providing some services, and with volunteers going out there. But boy, when it came to March, things changed quite a bit, and over the last year, things changed quite a bit. A lot of times when people ask me, what did you do last year? It's like I have to sit down and think about it, because in one sense you think it was just a year, but it truly was a year like no other. Obviously, the first thing we had to do was adapt to a pandemic. That meant, this is policing services are not something that we can do remotely, and it's not something that we can necessarily do from 6 feet away from somebody else. And despite a pandemic, the need for policing services would continue. So the first thing we ended up doing is trying to compartmentalize our operations, adjust some of our operations, take reports by phone where we could, ask people to come outside their homes, try to keep people from intermingling too much as we tried to get a handle on what the department was going to do. At the same time, as we rolled into that, we started to have police discussions on police reform. We had demonstrations. We worked with our community groups to ensure that they were peaceful demonstrations, but at the same time, we were also preparing to deal with potential civil unrest that you saw in the region. And then, of course, in Glendale, we had our own demonstrations related to the issue of Armenia, Artsakh, and Azerbaijan. Again, with the police department always actively being involved to protect First Amendment rights and allow people to exercise those rights. As with the pandemic, we ended up, shifting some gears. You would see us start moving to electric motorcycles, being out on patrol up on the mountain roads, some of the places where people could still go out and get some fresh air. And then we had to figure out how to engage with our community, even though things had changed. So we moved a lot of things online. We started doing neighborhood watch meetings online. We even moved our community academy into an online format, all designed to maintain that connection while still providing police work, sometimes handing out PPE, and even handing out meals to some of the people who had the misfortune of being houseless at that particular time. So some of the things that we continue to focus on and that I will cover with you in the next couple of minutes here is our response times. As I said, we still have people calling for service, and we want to make sure that we provide that emergency service. One of the things that we shifted gears to make sure that we could do health order education and enforcement and put a specific focus on that. We continue and always focus on our Part 1 crime rate and the criminal investigations that we need to do, and then how we handled what we did in terms of handling our calls for service, and this will paint a little bit of a picture for the department. How we handle, or when people call, Glendale expects a high level of service. Our goal is to provide emergency service within 5 minutes or less from the time that the person actually calls the police department. So with those who fall into what we call priority E and priority 1, and during the calendar year 2020, we actually met those with an average of 3 minutes and 56 seconds for emergency calls and priority 1 calls. These are the crimes where something is happening right now. On our priority 2 calls, which might be nuisance type calls, disturbances, things where there's not immediate threat, we try to get to those within 25 minutes. This last year, we actually managed to handle those on an average of just under 12 minutes. And then our priority 3 calls, which are calls where somebody's calling to basically report something that had happened, but there's not immediate threat, those were handled. Our goal is to handle those in under 40 minutes. Those were handled in 36 minutes. One of the other things that we focused on was health order education and enforcement. With the pandemic and the issues that needed to be helped there, this became a citywide and a community-wide problem. So working with our partners over in code enforcement and neighborhood services, thank you. We continue to help our community go through this pandemic. And by August, we had actually done that using a task force that actually made over 11,000 contacts, handled 741 calls, issued 182 citations, 1,064 written citations, and actually for an incentive for those doing the right thing and wearing masks in a public place, issued 51 gift cards. We actually invested about 5,100 hours of service in this particular effort. I'm happy to report that in 2020, our Part 1 crime actually went down slightly. We reduced property crime by approximately 3%, and our violent crime went down approximately 10%. And police officers continued to suit up and go out and do a job. And I got to tell you, I am incredibly proud of the men and women of the Glendale Police Department, despite all the challenges, despite all the risks. As said, this is a business where it involves human contact. They came into work every single day and went out and focused on their job. So in order to kind of paint the picture here, when we talk about having response times and having adequate response times, I want to kind of paint the picture is last year we answered approximately 221,000 telephone calls in our 911 center. That comes down into, we actually responded to about 46,000 calls for service from the community, and then police officers going out and doing the work in the communities, traffic violations, talking to people. That's an additional 59,000. So we did 105,000 different things in this last year. That included issuing over 12,000 citations and making over 6,300 arrests and writing over 24,000 reports. So in order to do this, kind of looking at our budget here, our salaries and benefits are about $86 million. Our M&O is about $20 million, which with capital outlay of about $332,000 gives us a total budget of about $106,000 for the next year. We currently have 341.5 full-time equivalents. That's broken down into 245 sworn personnel and 97 support personnel or professional staff. You will see that we increased our professional staff by 1. That was a transfer from another part of the city. And we also did an internal reallocation. That's primarily due to the fact that we implemented body-worn cameras in February, and in order to deal with what I call the backroom operation of all the video and being able to provide the discovery and manage all of that data, we moved resources in to support that operation. Our hourly positions remained approximately flat. The one thing I would like to note in the hourly position is that includes our cadet program, and one of the ways that we work on building our department and making our department reflective of the community as we go forward has to do with recruiting from our local community. And so being able to take people who are explorers and then be able to, if they're interested, and directly recruiting from our community for people into the police cadet position, which is a part-time position that allows people to work part-time in the police department while going to college and working around their schedule, that we then hope we can promote them into other positions within the department. Our overall budget is broken into several funds, the largest being the general fund with a proposed budget of about $99.6 million this next year. That is up a little bit, accounting for increases in contracts. It also accounts for an increase in building maintenance, fleet charges, and a few other funds. Then in order to round out the budget, we also have our asset forfeiture, which helps us pay for some of our training and some of our capital outlay. This budget is going down slightly, but we're also carrying over an expense for some training, what we call a FATS machine for use of force simulation and training from last year's budget. We also count on several specialized grants. This fund includes our Office of Traffic Safety Grant, what they now call a Prop 64 grant to deal with impaired drivers, and then some of the grants that we get to help support some of our federal task forces. The supplemental law enforcement budget goes down slightly. It's designed to approximate the revenue that we should get through that fund. And then we have our police building fund, which covers the cost of the building, and then our Joint Air Support Fund, which we pay for our own personnel, but half the operational costs are reimbursed by the city of Burbank because we split that operation with them. Just to focus in on a couple of things. So in our general fund, what I want to do is just take a moment and talk about investigations, because we spend a lot of time talking about frontline services. Our investigations is about $18 million of our general fund budget, and the bulk of the work gets done in our Criminal Investigations Bureau, which is about 22 people and one manager and about 6 professional staff. This last year, they handled over 15,000 investigations. And so, our robbery homicide group handled 3,200 investigations. And I think one of the things, despite a pandemic and despite those challenges, we had 3 homicides this last year and 1 attempted homicide. Every single one has been solved. Every single one. Our Assaults Bureau handled 4,700 cases. We had some what I'll call higher profile sexual assault cases with suspects out of state. Again, they've been solved, and we've extradited suspects, making the point that in Glendale, if you commit a crime, this police department's going to do its job, and those investigators are going to follow up, and we're going to file those cases. Probably one of the more challenging ones is our burglary auto theft, handled well over 4,000 cases. I've told you before that we've seen an increase in auto theft, and we're seeing an increase in some of the theft-related cases as we come into this year. The challenges with $0 bail, and especially during the pandemic, with a specific crew of people being released from custody and us having to go and arrest them multiple times. It has created its challenges, and that's one of the challenges that we will be addressing going forward, as that $0 bail still stays in place today. And then, our financial crime services, I got to tell you, they've also been doing a yeoman's job, because even our frontline officers are finding lots of evidence of EDD fraud, and all of those cases are being followed up on. We have a court services detail that files most of our misdemeanor cases. They handled over 3,000 cases this last year. And then our vice narcotics units handled about 700 or so cases during this last year. And again, this would be one that you would expect would be a slightly slower year. The second part that I kind of like to focus on is we spent a lot of time talking about mental health and some of the challenges that we have related to that, and homelessness. And here in Glendale, I guess, as I talk to my colleagues in other cities, I guess say we've worked on this for a number of years with the continuum of care, having partnerships with community services and parks, having partnerships with our nonprofit organizations, but also having somebody from the Department of Mental Health assigned to us as a clinician. And we have changed the name of what we used to call our Community Impact Team. It is now what we call CORE. It is our Community Outreach Resources and Engagement Bureau, which really has 2 functions. One is what we call our Community Relations Team. And for those of you who have been around for a little while, we are back to having 1 officer for each of our districts. And their primary focus is to work with the community to identify and solve those longer-term problems that are out there. And then we have our homeless outreach team and our mental health evaluation team and our SROs. And we're really focusing on building and maintaining and enhancing relationships with our community and solving problems on a long-term basis. As you can see here, with just the mental health evaluation team, they conducted 153 evaluations, placed 117 people on 72-hour holds. But I think the real value is the ability to follow up on things that occur outside of that. I was looking over the last 10 years, and I'd say our mental health related issues have doubled, and we are dealing with those. And hence, you've also seen us looking to enhance this program as we go forward, again, with the goal of solving problems on a longer term basis, so that we're not trying to arrest our way out of this problem. We're actually trying to solve it in the long haul. And the same goes with homeless outreach, working with the individuals, working with our business community, and with our partners and nonprofits in here in the city to solve those on a long-term basis. And as said, and we have those success stories of being able to reunite people with their families or house veterans into long-term supportive housing. One of the other things that the police department has, which is unique, and we have it listed here in the special grants fund, and I talked about what's in the special grants fund a little bit early. Most of that is some of our Office of Traffic Safety, some of the other things. But one of the things we've traditionally funded, especially the capital projects out of in grants, is our forensic services and our DNA lab. And I got to tell you, this is one of those things that has become worth its weight in gold to the police department. We started this a number of years ago with some seed money from the federal government. We now not only handle our own cases, but we handle cases for 25 other local and federal agencies on a fee-for-service basis. And you can see the numbers here. In 2019, they did 366 cases and 1,700 samples. In 2020, we moved up to 391 cases and 1,761 samples. With some of the grants that we've gotten from the federal government and our existing staffing, we've managed to reduce our turnaround times. I can tell you that for the most part, we can give people an initial answer as to whether we have a DNA match within the 30 to 60 day time frame, with a little bit longer for the written report to follow behind that. We have now a national reputation and a statewide reputation because we are one of the few labs, and I say this with a lot of pride in our lab director and the lab people. We are one of the few labs in the United States that can do DNA on shell casings. I have sat in rooms where people said, you can't do that. And I got to tell you, this is just part of what Glendale PD is. When people say you can't do that, our lab director looked at it and says, I think we can. And she had detectives a number of years ago walking around with shell casings in their pockets to do the studies and prove that. So we now do this we do this for other people because a lot of places can't do that. So we do it for ourselves and out there. But just to give you a sense of what they did in this last year in terms of, I've gave you the samples, but between our cases and outside agency cases, they did work on 32 homicides, 11 attempt murders, 85 other violent crimes. One of the things that makes it very valuable for us is 256 property crimes. So not only do we handle violent crime, but we also do lab services on property crimes. And then there are a few others to round that out. If you happen to see the news article, we also have computer forensics. We were able to assist Los Angeles Police Department in recovering data that actually helped them solve a murder case. So although what I'll call a small lab, the people are incredible, like everybody in this organization, and they've done an incredible job in doing that. So where are we headed next? So there are a few things that we're looking at doing. Traffic safety is always one of those things that's critical for us and something that we will continue to focus on. We continue to use data, work with our community, and as we were talking a couple of weeks ago at council, looking at how we might be able to leverage new technology to improve traffic safety. This will be one of those things that we have to constantly pay attention to in a community to keep it from going stale. We are going to look at making sure that we remain very responsive to our community in terms of response times, that so when somebody calls for help, that you have somebody. We're looking at trying to reduce our response to the less emergency type calls, so the priority 2s and priority 3s, to bring those down a little bit. And one of the things is I've told you that we believe in constitutional and respectful policing, and we're committed to the concept of continuous improvement. And so we're implementing what I'm calling a critical incident review, and this is supplemented by the fact that we have body-worn cameras where internally we're going to review our critical incidents within 30 days with the idea of being able to learn lessons, feed that information back into the organization so that we as an organization and as individuals can perform better as we go forward. And then technology. Technology has changed dramatically in the 30 years that I have been here. We are working on staying up with that. We are midstream of replacing our CAD, our computer-aided dispatch and records management system. We'll be implementing the use of unmanned aerial systems to help us with some of our crimes and some of our crime scenes, whether it be mapping or searching for people. Body-worn cameras are in the process of being fully implemented, and I think one of the things that's going to be more exciting is as we look at the cell phone that we all carry around, it has more and more capabilities. And so what we're looking at is not only how to use that not only can we use that to collect evidence, but we're looking at transitioning that to what we call e-sites. So eliminating paper citations and being able to take a picture of a driver's license, have it preload all the information on a citation, and be able to issue those citations in the field. And of course, we will continue to be reviewing our policies and procedures to make sure that we are contemporary and on the cutting edge of police work. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief, very much for that report. Questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Brotman?
Yeah, thanks, Chief. That was a great report. Just a question, you were talking before about mental health, and we've talked about this, I know we're going to enhance that team, but I'm curious, what percentage would you say roughly of the calls that our patrol officers get are related to mental health, homelessness, and or domestic violence? And I don't know if you can segregate those or just give us a rough idea or come back with that later. But I'm curious about that.
A couple of those I would have to look up. I don't know the domestic violence ones off the top of my head. So I would have to look that up. That's something that we can pull out. When I look at the number of 5150 reports, if I'm going back to 2019, it's just under 1,000. So if we're looking at about 50,000 calls for service, if I'm doing my math right, that's about 5% are related to that. But I'm also gonna couch that in a little bit of a different term, because when we look at whether it's our homeless population or even a population that we find in jail, we find that 2/3 of them have some sort of mental health related issue, and about 2/3 of them have a substance abuse related issue. So obviously there's an intersection between those. So even in making our community safer, addressing mental health and substance abuse are two things that a community and a county are going to have to address. So it's not just the ones that are solely mental health related. It's also, although they fall in the area of being a crime and being arrested, it's also making sure that those supportive services come in on the back end to help that also.
Yeah, I mean, from my one very limited ride along, it seemed like mental health was a major portion of the stops. That was just one evening. So I don't know how it would work across. But I'm thinking like when patrol officers, the stops that they're making, the calls that they're getting, and the stops that I don't mean stops like stopping a car, but I mean the calls they're getting and the responding to. Only 5% mental health, or you think it would be more than that?
I'm actually looking at 2019, where we actually did about 772 mental health actual, what we call 5150 reports. And so those would actually be the commitments. I don't have 2020 numbers quite rounded out on that. But as I said, because of we're dealing with other things that don't specifically necessarily become mental health, that percentage is going to be much, much larger, where we are going to be dealing with people who have mental health related issues. It's just that they're not necessarily going to fit the criteria for a 72-hour hold, but it is something that we're going to deal with. So what you're seeing is not unusual. When I talk to the officers working the field, to say, hey, we're handling more than that. When I talk to people that have been around, as long or longer than I have, and the statistics bear it out, the number of issues that we're dealing with that involve mental health have increased dramatically.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Agajanian.
Okay, I just want to make a correction. If the chief says we get 50,000 calls and 1,000 is mental health, that's 2%, not 5%, by the way. Just to correct.
I stand corrected.
Resident statistician. Thank you, council member. Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Najarian.
Thank you, Chief, for the report. You run a great department. And in light of all the challenges that you highlighted this past year, both public health and social movements, you did a really good job. And I think people talk about that a lot, and it's really appreciated, especially when we look at some of the other departments throughout the country that aren't as well run and disciplined as our officers. But here's the question: we're talking. This is a budget discussion. Are you undermanned or underpersoned? Do you need additional resources, or are you able to do? I know you're looking at the city manager. It's like, I know what you want to say, but he's probably looking at you and saying, But, you know, speak freely. Speak freely, Chief. What is it that we could do in this budget process that would help you complete your mission as you're doing so now?
So two things. One is thank you for the compliments, and I'm going to say thank you on behalf of the men and women who work in this department. As I said, when I wander around, I got to tell you, we really do have great people, and they work really, really hard. There may not be a lot of us, you know, on a per capita basis in this department, but what we have are really, really incredible, and they have performed admirably under the challenging conditions of this last year. They have adapted. They have done their job. You know, as traffic went down, we needed to deal with people who are, you know, speeding on Glen Oaks and doing racing, and they have stepped up time and time again to do this job. So I just do want to say thank you on behalf of them, because as I said, couldn't be prouder of them. You know, would I like more resources? I would always like more resources, but I'll answer it practically. Last year, I'll say thank you because we added 2 police officers, and that's what's allowing us to really sort of re-engage at the community-based level. Right now, I do have vacancies, so this conversation may change this next year. You know, some of the things that we had to adapt to is we actually did, with our HR department, continue to do recruiting and testing throughout this entire pandemic. We had to make some changes, but everybody figured out how to make it and do that. But I still have vacancies in the department that we were working diligently on filling. We just graduated 8 from the police academy this last week. And I'm going to put a plug in because we're just good. We actually had the honor recruit in that class. The number 1 all-around police officer in that class was a Glendale PD police officer. Very, very proud of that group. So when we get that staffing level up, I will be back to talk to you about adding some additional resources to the department, because we're working very, very hard, and folks are working overtime to make this all come together with our community.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, anyone else?
Madam
Chief,
Mayor?
I would like to, Councilmember Kasakian.
Thank you. Chief, I want to thank you. I think that you and your staff have done an incredible job during very difficult and challenging times. Everything that has been mentioned, and just the way policing has had to adapt and change during the pandemic, along with all of the societal forces and changes that we're experiencing right now that I'm sure we'll be feeling the effects of and adapting to in the years to come. So I am incredibly encouraged by the quality and professionalism of the staff every day, just from my own interactions and what I see in the public from the ride-alongs that I've done, and just through my years of being involved and engaged with your staff. At the same time, I do want to ask a couple of questions, and I know that this year may be an outlier year, but I do want to know what our trends are regarding overtime. I know that the pandemic may have affected that, and one of the things I would like to ask, because I know that, I would like to get some clarification whether it's still the case where if an officer comes in contact with someone who has COVID or potentially did, if they're still being required to quarantine for a requisite period of time, and how we're backfilling those or filling that vacancy on the street, you know, on that beat or that assignment, which I'm sure is potentially going to be an overtime cost. I can anticipate that overtime costs may have increased, or that there's going to be some there will be some impact to the budget this cycle, but I would like to have a clear picture of that to know where we're going, also compared to where we've been, so we can understand where we need to be next year. And with that, it would be interesting to me if it is the case where officers have to quarantine and not come to work and have to isolate until the period of time has passed, as was per the CDC guidelines. How many of our officers and individuals who are, and by the way, I've been an advocate for police officers being the first to be in line for vaccinations because of the general interactions and day-to-day interactions that you have with the public. I'd like to know how many of our officers that are out there are vaccinated and are planning to be vaccinated. What is our goal as a department?
Mayor Devine, members of council, Councilmember Sakian, let me tackle the overtime question first. COVID did have an impact on our operations, as do if we haven't filled vacancies, those also have an impact on our operations. So we will use salary savings from vacancies to fill in and make sure that we're providing the level of service needed for our community. I can tell you that looking at the number of people that we quarantined during the fiscal year, probably lost about 16,000 hours to people being out, because if you had that, yeah, it's significant. I think when I did the math, it's the equivalent of about 8 FTEs that we lost because people went out and were doing their job. I mean, some of that was people that were off duty, but it doesn't really matter. Those are people we had to put off work and or quarantine because of a close exposure. And yes, in order to maintain minimum staffing, in order to make sure that we are providing the level of service that our community expects, we backfilled on overtime to do that. And that is an expense that we have absorbed within our budget this year. So overtime this year is up. Add on top of that we had demonstrations that we were preparing for potential civil unrest around elections. We're preparing for potential civil unrest around the inauguration, the ability to provide mutual aid to other cities. As I said, I truly mean it. It has been a year like no other. So we probably spent over our budget for overtime is about $3.7 million, and last I checked, we're a little bit over $5 million at this point, and there'll be more to come this year. As I said, in order to maintain those staffing levels. Yes, we still do quarantine. We follow CDC guidelines. We try to stay up to date. I know that was frustrating for people in the organization because it's like about the time you figure out one rule, the guidelines change and you're on a different rule, and now there's a different rule, and just trying to stay on top of that. I have to thank the senior staff and the management team and our Professional Standards Bureau because they have stayed on top of that with a nurse educator helping us make wise decisions about protecting the folks who work here. We have made vaccines available to anybody who wants them. They are voluntary, so I don't know exactly how many are, but I've encouraged all those that are interested to do that. Fortunately, in the last few weeks, our numbers have come down. I don't think we've quarantined anybody in the last month or so.
So again, I don't know what the requirements would be for vaccinations, but then as much as we can get individuals who are out there on the front line interacting with the public to be safe and to be vaccinated, and also for it to have the benefit to keep our costs down and our staffing levels to where they need to be, I believe, Madam Mayor and colleagues, that we ought to be looking into that. In addition to that, you mentioned that there was some EDD fraud investigation that was being done. And my question is, since that is a state agency and a state function, are we being reimbursed for any of the assistance that we're providing to the state to do their job?
Most of the EDD fraud that we're finding is not probably what you think of in the normal thing. What we're finding is the indicia of identity theft, where we're finding cars and they've got umpteen number of people's IDs and or electronic benefit cards. Generally because the jurisdiction is going to fall within LA County and within Glendale, we're taking those and we're filing those.
Okay. I don't know if there's any opportunity. I know that oftentimes you do the heavy lifting for other agencies, and there isn't always the compensation or gratitude that it can be a thankless work that your staff does. But in as much as if there's any stone that we can turn over to find places where we can recoup some of the costs of the police work that we're doing to help other agencies do their work, whether it's the state level, federal level, that would be, I encourage that and I appreciate that. Ultimately, I think that we were in a unique year, as you mentioned. I see these costs. The biggest concern is the continuous increase in these costs and what we need to do as a city to look at what are the needs and what are the wants in every budget, not just law enforcement, but across the board. We see this figure now creeping up and going over 100 million and taking a bigger and bigger chunk out of the general fund, when we just got through a discussion where we're talking about increasing arts and culture funding and adding staff here and adding staff there. At one point or another, we need to be realistic about what we have, what are our needs, and again, what are our wants, and what we can afford to pay for. And I'm not bringing this up specifically about police, although it is a large portion of our expenses. But since you are the last presentation of the day, I'm rolling my overall comments into my comments following the conclusion of your presentation to us. So we do have to look at this, and we have to look at where do we cut and where can we afford to cut. Some of it may not be realistic. I know that Councilmember Najarian asked about what we can do to help you do your job. Obviously, there is other pressures and strains from policy decisions that are made at other levels, which then trickle into our day-to-day affairs and responsibilities, whether it's the release or the way we do policing or the reforming of the bail bond system. All of those are going to have impacts. So we need to look at where we can best expend our resources and how we can be most effective. I commend you and your staff for doing the best that you're able to under the circumstances. We will continue to support you to be able to do that job. And I also want to echo the statements about the continued work on mental health. I think a lot of it, including the drug abuse issues, are all related to how we care for the mental health of our community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mayor, I do like to tell you that I do have a caller on the line.
Yes, okay, all right. Let's hear from the caller. Then I'll make my comments and questions.
Herbert Milano, you're live. You have 3 minutes. Herbert?
Mayor Devine, council members, my name is Herbert Milano. Would it be a statement of intellectual honesty to say that the city of Glendale does not have a balanced budget? And furthermore, that its expenditures far exceed its ability to pay for them? For the past 20 years, the city of Glendale has incurred unfunded pension debt of about $30 million annually. That now totals about $600 million. That is an unfunded debt load of about $8,000 for each and every household in Glendale. And this debt continues to increase every year. Now, my next comments, by the way, do not imply a lack of appreciation for the essential and often crucial work of the Glendale police, firefighters, and paramedics. But about half of that debt is attributed to the pension changes made 20 years ago on April 24, 2001, to all police and fire personnel that was retroactive 30 years to 1971. By my rough estimates, on that day in 2001, each police officer and firefighter in Glendale received a $1 million additional pension benefit added to their overall pension, lifetime pension benefit. The combination of large salary increases then, coupled with insufficient investment returns from CalPERS, continues to overburden the city's pension debt. This problem remains unabated despite the numerous tax and fee increases in the last 50 years. I suggest that the City Council take a dedicated budget session to take a deep look at the safety budget and tackle this financial problem head on. Whereas inflation has increased about 15% and the population has remained fairly constant, the budget of the Glendale Police Department has increased from $64 million from roughly 12 years ago to over $104 million in 12 years. I presented and provided 4 slides, if I'm able to show them, to just basically show the comparative trend. If I may, I want to show the compensation on the cost for the last 3 years of the Glendale Police Department, if I may. Since we are on the delay, I don't know if this is actually showing.
The slides are up.
Okay, thank you. I highlighted basically the divisions. I didn't include the administrative part. How field services have increased in terms of cost, 6%, benefits 22%. Investigative services increased by 10%, but benefits 25%. And support services up by 32% in terms of salaries, but benefits went up by 56%, if my calculations are correct. My point is that the pension obligation is hitting the police budget incredibly hard, and the overall city budget as well. If I may, I show another slide briefly. There's the comparative of the Glendale Police Department, let's say, with Parks and Rec. I don't know if that's showing up, but we have a fairly steady expenditure from Parks of around $60 million on average every single year since 2009. But you can see an exponential growth for the Glendale Police Department's budget. If we take a look at Public Works, you can see that, it is.
Milano,
it's
may I
a
interrupt you for a second? How much longer will you need?
I need just a couple of minutes, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay. In this case, the Public Works, and it is evident by the actual conditions of the roads that I see every day, and the fact that, the conditions are in significant state of disrepair. It is shown there in Public Works. So the increases in the police budget is impacting what the city has, the money that it has available for Public Works. Very well. What I want to address is, in a second, please, so I can wrap this up, that the increases in safety costs, primarily in the pension system, have come at a cost of deferred infrastructure work needed to properly maintain the city's roads, the resulting in financial constraints that prevented the construction of adequate parkland to meet the needs of residents in the densest part of the city. It prevents the city from addressing public needs in time of severe economic downturn, as it did during the pandemic last year. I urge the City Council to address forthright the issues and direct the city manager and the police chiefs to come back with a budget that meets the dire reality of this burden. We can't afford any more bonded debt, more sales tax increases, more fee increases, and fail to address the financial reality with sober minds. I suggest that this time, you roll up your sleeves and tackle the huge financial problems you face. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Milano. Thank you. I think some of your points are well taken, and I think we have to maybe try to remember those in our future. Council needs to remember those in our future decisions. But it does behoove us as council members to find a balance between all of these services and programs, et cetera, and employees that we have to work with. I have a question, Chief, if I may. Did you mention an electric motorcycle in your presentation?
Mayor Devine, yes, I did.
You're on mute. Do we have those?
Last year, we added, with some assistance from Glendale Water and Power, we added 2 electric motorcycles. They're designed more for the off-road, but they do get some use. And we put those to work during the pandemic on the trail patrol. So it's something that we are looking at.
On trail patrol. Okay. How many employees? I think you said you have 22 investigators. Is that correct?
In the Criminal Investigations Bureau, that's about right.
Okay. And how many in the DNA lab? Well, how many employees in the DNA lab?
Give me just a second to flip to my DNA page.
I remember when that DNA lab was all women, all females. It was very small. I think there were 4 or 5 of them. How many do we have now?
It's still in the ballpark of 4 or 5.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. Let me ask you this. This may be an academic question, but 3.7 million for overtime is kind of shocking. We could pay for a lot of police officers with $3.7 million. Would that, if we hired more police officers, I guess is my question, would that solve some of the overtime problems that we have, issues, hours, or not?
Mayor Devine, not necessarily. So let me go back to the DNA question. We actually have 10 people in the DNA lab now.
Okay.
Including our forensic staff. So we have 10 people. So we have our forensics, we have our DNA, and we have our computer forensics, all of which are certified. There's going to be
I think council just allot for a couple more positions or different changes in?
No, yes, what you did do is we reclassified forensic specialists into criminalists. So we rechanged the titles to make it more appropriate to a modern forensics lab.
Okay.
But that was basically a wash in terms of the actual costs.
Okay. And now for the overtime.
Yeah, on the overtime, no, it will not necessarily eliminate all overtime. So there are certain special events that we do on overtime. There are certain grant-funded overtime. When officers make arrests or write traffic citations, they end up going to court. That ends up being a lot of times outside their normal work schedule, so that also provides for a level of overtime. So even with even if we are fully staffed, there's still going to be a need for an overtime budget.
Okay, thank you. And you plan on enhancing your mental health officers? Is that the training that they'll be getting, more training, or how do you plan on?
We've already done the training with the Measure S section of the budget. We are asking for the additional funding to add a clinician because right now what we can do is cover 40 hours a week with the clinician, and that leaves the balance of the time to be covered by our patrol officers, and we'd like to have a clinician available so that we can, it helps us make, I'm just going to say, wiser or better decisions on how we handle those issues, whether they need to be put on a hold, whether they don't need to be put on a hold, what the appropriate referral is. It gives us a level of expertise and would expand that level of expertise.
And that person would be on call, more or less, or full-time?
That would be a contracted full-time clinician, probably from the Department of Mental Health.
Okay, thank you. And of course, I echo all of the compliments that you've gotten for your department. You know, we all feel that you are doing a fantastic job. So you can relay that. Councilmember Brotman, you're on mute. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on something. So first of all, Chief, you know, yeah, I want to echo some of the comments that my colleagues have made. I have the highest admiration for the work that your department does. And I know, you know, no group is perfect, and you're the first to admit that, but they're pretty damn good. And when you compare us to some of the neighboring police departments, and of course to others around the country where we hear so many, you know, unfortunate stories, to say the least. You know, it's not by accident. I'm sure that you know, things in Glendale are very, very different. So I kind of want to say that at the outset. At the same time, you know, we're here to talk budget, and we have a responsibility to make sure that every dollar is wisely spent, and we're balancing all the needs, which I know you understand. And so on that, I wanted to get your comments on one of the slides that Mr. Milano did not present. It didn't come up now, but he emailed them to us. And I wonder if, Aram, if you could put up the last slide. There was one that compared cost, budget, total budget to property crime. And I was basically, what I want to ask you is this the right way to look at it? And can you kind of comment on that? You know, this looks very, very striking, that increase in the cost of policing relative to, at least this is property crime, not all crime, I suppose. So could you just, you know, touch on that a little bit?
Mayor Devine, members of council, Councilmember Brotman, certainly. Actually, I don't think that's the way to look at it, because ideally what we're aiming for is the absence of crime. So putting a cost on the number of crimes that occur, I think, is kind of upside down. We work really, really hard in this community. Every man and woman in this police department, and working together with the community, work really hard to have a safe community so that we have less crime. And that does, you know, that comes at a price. We invest in our community and the police department to do that. When I kind of look at that, if I actually look, just kind of looking at cost per capita, I think we're spending in the ballpark of $522 per capita in the community. I think Burbank spends like $594 per capita, and Pasadena spends $630 per capita. So when we look at the value that this police department provides, the cost that, you know, each person, if you will, contributes to this is less than our surrounding communities. And then I guess if you don't mind, I'm going to take the opportunity to say that we also tend to, you know, we expect a lot more out of our police officers. So we're not, I'm not going to say we're not overstaffed by any stretch, and we expect a lot out of the people that are here. I mean, we actually, if we look on a per officer basis, we actually end up writing more reports, more citations, and making more arrests per officer in the department than our surrounding communities.
But when you look over time like this, and I think this is, this certainly isn't a Glendale thing. This is kind of certainly, statewide, maybe nationwide. But the cost of policing per capita, if you go back to 2012 and you compare that, or if you go back to any date, it has been increasing quite a bit. What would you attribute that to?
I mean, some of it is, as I'll tell you, the challenge we have in recruiting. And so being able to staff people, there is not a large pool of qualified candidates. We are competitive. I'm going to say we're competitive in the labor market, but we're average in our labor market in terms of what we pay in terms of salaries. And so in order to attract the candidates that we have, we're going to need to maintain that.
And do you see this trend continuing, where the cost of policing is growing, at higher than the inflation rate? And I guess significantly higher than the inflation rate.
That one, I might have to defer to the economist in you on that one, as opposed to me, because I don't know where that trend may go. As I said, I think for the people here, I think we get good value for it. For it, as I said, we get hardworking people. We enjoy a low crime rate. We have good support and work with our community. And as I said, we do it with less officers than most of our and staff, total staff, than our surrounding communities. I'm not sure where I haven't looked at it, so I'm not 100% sure where the trend will go, or whether it will adjust to inflation or be something different than that.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Right. And thank you, Chief, very much. If there aren't any other comments, questions from my colleagues, I will ask what's next.
Adjournment.
Mr. Galanian, are we ready for adjournment?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, thank you for spending the last almost 3 hours on this budget study session. Next one, study session number 5, will be on Thursday, the 13th at 9 a.m. And we will have a number of departments that will present their budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Second, we are adjourned at 11:43 a.m. Thank you all. See you later.